son is racing.
Welcome, race fans, to another episode of the Rubbin' Is Racing Daily Fantasy NASCAR Show. We have all your action from the Coke Zero Sugar 400. This week, kids, we're back at Daytona for restrictor plate racing and car carnage. Stages are going to be at lap 40, lap 80, and then we'll race the final 80 laps all the way to the finish. When Austin Dillon won the Daytona 500 in the spring, he became the third driver to lead only one lap and win the race. The winner of this race has come from the top 5 starting position roughly 52% of the time, from the top 10 starting position 77% of the time, and from 21st or worse only 6% of the time. But it's important to remember that at the restrictor plates, sometimes it's not even important to have the race winner on the winning lineup. Guys, I want to apologize personally for being a man down again this week. This time it was totally my fault. I had a friend surprise me with a birthday trip to an escape room. By the way, if you haven't done an escape room yet, they are really fun when done right. We had a blast last night. I want to apologize, though, for any inconvenience this has caused any of you guys that have a scheduled time that you like to watch the show. I also want to apologize to my co-host, Liehr. I feel bad because he was unable to join me when this happened. I look forward to having Liehr back next week. Before we actually get into the picks, I think it's important for us to talk about what restrictor plate racing is and what it does to the fantasy landscape. Guys, restrictor plate racing just means that we've basically equalized all the cars on the track, which means that there's no inherent advantage. This means this race is all guesswork. If anyone out there is telling you different, they're probably first charging you money for their advice, and second, they're just bold-faced lying to you. Let me explain what I mean by that. It used to be that at restrictor plate racing tracks in NASCAR, the advantage was to players that were smart and wanting to start all the cars at the back of the field. Fantasy players, most of them, were not adjusting to the restrictor plate tracks, and thus the smart players had an advantage, especially when they would mass enter these tournaments. In the last couple of years, though, all of the touts have been telling everyone just that when they charge them money for that information. So the field of players as a whole has gravitated towards that strategy, making that strategy extremely common. Also, it should be noted that the last fantasy winner of a restrictor plate race won the tournament doing the opposite of this strategy, starting 5 drivers in the top 10 with only 1 place differential car, a lineup that I thought was someone smoking crack. But they ended up taking down the money. That lineup shouldn't have worked out, but it did. So I guess what I'm telling you guys this week is to go with your gut. What I'm going to tell you may or may not matter. Play who you want, have fun with it, but just know this week it's all guesswork. So I would adjust your approach and your investment, what you're trying to play this week, appropriately. Without Liehr here, I don't feel that it's appropriate for me to do the burning rubber. Actually, that's just my excuses. Every time I've tried to do it, it is a dumpster fire. That's the best way you could describe me trying to do the burning rubber, baby. So this week I'm going to do something a little different for you guys. I'm just going to run through a lot of what I think are the really interesting plays this week. I'm personally going to be avoiding any drivers starting in the top 10. That's just what I do at restrictor plates. Now, I'm not going to just start cars 20-something and back, which is what I used to do. I'm going to try to pivot a little by maybe taking a car in the teens. I don't know. I haven't settled in on a strategy, and we're only 6-7 hours away from race time. So I'm still trying to figure out where my gut is leading me this week. I just know I'm never playing Brad Keselowski starting 3rd. I know I'm not playing Joey Logano 11th, although that's where it starts to get interesting to me, is Joey Logano at 11th does have the possibility of gaining enough place differential. But the ones that are really sexy to me of the main guys that didn't qualify well are Denny Hamlin starting 17th, Kyle Busch starting 15th, we've got Martin Truex Jr. starting 13th, Kyle Larson starting 14th, and Blaney starting 12th. Those are all really interesting plays, but the math says that they're on the edge of whether or not they're going to gain enough place differential points to actually be required on the winning lineup. They're right on that brink point, and I think most people are going to, like I said, try to play people from the back of the field. So playing one or multiple of those guys might be interesting, but it increases the likelihood that your lineup might not get it done. But if it does get it done, it might help you be on an island. So I would pay attention to that. One person that I don't want to play, and if I'm wrong, I'm just wrong and I'm lighting my money on fire. I'm completely fading Chase Elliott starting first. There's absolutely, like, this isn't the first time Chase Elliott has gotten the pole at a restrictor plate track. And it's not the first time he's been a play that you don't want to make. Guys, until Chase Elliott wins, I'm just not going to advocate you starting him on the pole ever, much less at a restrictor plate. I think the amount of people that do start Chase Elliott, which will probably be around 15 to 30%, are lighting money on fire this week off the get-go, which is better for us, guys, right? So that brings us to some more picks that we can talk about. I also don't really have any interest in Stenhouse starting 6th. Kurt Busch starting 23rd is an interesting play in my opinion. He's somebody that I would think about rostering here. The plays I'm really on, Amarola starting 26th is really interesting. I think fading Jimmy Johnson and Olive Hendrick, basically who all overqualified, is an easy play this week. Clint Boyer's another one of those tweeners starting 9th. We've got Eric Jones starting 29th. I love that play. I also love J-Mac starting 27th. Austin Dillon starting 10th. You couldn't pay me to roster. Alex Bowman, I feel the same way about. Paul Menard starting 30th is an interesting play as well. And that Wood Brothers ride, they traditionally do really well at restrictor plate tracks. Paul Menard also does well at restrictor plate tracks. I like this play. I think a lot of people may be on it. So maybe you want to avoid it if you're looking to try to get unique somewhere. But Paul Menard may be required to be on the winning lineup this week, which is just weird to say. I would then skip William Byron and Ryan Newman. You could play Byron if you want to, starting 18th, but Newman starting 7th is just not an option for me. We're then in the group of drivers where I think the money is going to be made this week. We start with Daniel Suarez at starting 32nd. This is an interesting play. His equipment is so much better than where he's starting at. His ownership should be astronomical. I have no idea how high his ownership will be here, but it's probably going to be a guy that's required to be on the winning lineup. Trevor Bayne, who has been awful most of the season, starts 20th, and it's an interesting position in my opinion because of his terribleness, most people won't play him. You might be able to get on an island with Trevor Bayne, but he traditionally does well at restrictor plates and does have a win here at the Daytona 500 several years ago. I believe it was 2011 that he took that down. David Reagan starting 21st, Bubba Wallace starting 22nd are both also interesting plays. Ty Dillon starting 19th. He's starting too high, which will decrease his ownership, but once again, anything can happen at a restrictor plate. If the weird things happen and he can actually gain positions, that might be an interesting play. Is it a play I'm going to be personally making? Absolutely not, but it could help separate you and get you on an island. Casey Kane starting 28th, Allmendinger starting 24th, and Buescher starting 25th are all interesting and will probably carry decent ownership percentage with them as they're super cheap in the 62 to 5,800 range. I like those guys as plays. The one that intrigues me the most, and I know not to make this play, guys, but I kind of want to because I think it'll put me on a sole island. Michael McDowell was running like a bat out of hell on that track. And for a car that is not known to be a top 10 car and a driver that has always overperformed what his cars are capable of, Michael McDowell is sitting 8th. And I think no one is going to own Michael McDowell, and rightfully so, because he's starting too high up in the field. But if Michael McDowell can hold on to that position, at $5,700, it automatically pays off his salary. It would also probably put you on an island. I could be wrong. Somebody else out there might also be recommending Michael McDowell as a play. If they're doing it in any other way than what I just told you, where you hope and pray that he can hold on or that Carnage allows him to keep that spot or maybe even gain 1 or 2, then they really don't know what they're talking about. Michael McDowell makes an interesting play, but once again, it is a super risky play, and you just need to know that it's risk-reward. From then on out, we have the rest of the guys that most of them, we keep saying that we want to play Matt DiBenedetto and occasionally we play Ross Chastain. But guys, the worse equipment you get, the more guesswork it is. Now, at a restrictor plate, a lot of these guys are equalized, but even their lap times were slow enough that they won't be in the main pack. So you have to bank on carnage pumping these guys forward. Have we seen it work? Absolutely. As one of the top players in NASCAR took down the Daytona 500 and the Firecracker a couple of years ago, playing nothing but cars starting worse than 30th. So basically, what I've tried to provide you today in this with this racing information is that any strategy could possibly be right at a restrictor plate, because the one thing we can't predict are wrecks, and wrecks are the thing that happens at restrictor plate races. So guys, have fun this week, go with your gut, and hopefully we all win some money. Alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed my quick run through of guys that I'm interested in playing this week and the reasons why. Other than cars that are too slow to stay in the lead pack, lap times don't matter because of the draft here and the restrictor plates. Practices don't matter. It really is all about the math of place differential, and only if those cars don't get caught up in carnage. So what I'm trying to tell you guys this week is to play who you want, have fun, don't play outside your means by any stretch of the imagination, and just enjoy a good restrictor plate race. Hopefully we can have a real fun weekend, and hopefully some of us will make some money. With that said, I'm really excited to get Liehr back next week, as it's difficult running a show by yourself unless you're just reading off a spreadsheet, and I refuse to do that to you guys. So we'll have Liehr back next week. By the way, even though Liehr wasn't able to film the show, he did send me the updates for our season-long league. You can check those out at thefantasydonks.com. That's all up to date. Thanks for tuning in, guys, as always. Have a great one.